Do you think that data can tell us more about the actual true effect of the US-China trade war? Can we see it in the data?
Interestingly, there were two academic research papers that came out, one whose lead author is Penelope Goldberg of Yale, who's the chief economist of the World Bank, and one which is Mary Amiti, David Weinstein, and co-authors. And both of them show that we can tell that it is consumers, purchasers, including businesses as well as households, who are bearing almost all the cost of the tariffs the US government has put on Chinese imports. They haven't been absorbed by the companies selling. They haven't certainly been paid by the Chinese. In China, it's harder to tell because there is a slowdown in China that we would argue at Peterson is largely due to the state interference in the economy, but the Chinese government has reason to blame some of it on US pressure. So on the tariff side, we know in the US it's hurting. On the Chinese side, it's much more uncertain.
Everybody's talking about the relationship between the United States and China. Do you think there are important systemic tension areas that people should be monitoring as well?
I think there are three things that I worry about coming out of the various trade conflicts in the world right now. The first, mostly driven by the US, is the possibility of trade conflict actually with the EU. The US government under President Trump seems to be conflicting with the EU over auto sales. The EU government doesn't see any room to give ground on agriculture restrictions. I am hopeful nothing will happen, but that could blow up. Second, the US government is, in a way I find very destructive, trying to disrupt the operation of the World Trade Organization. The World Trade Organization has its limitations, dealing with China, dealing with intellectual property rights, but basically disrupting the operations of its dispute settlement, getting around it with so-called national security tariffs, as the Trump administration is doing, hurts everybody, particularly emerging markets. And third, going back to some of the investment themes we talked about with Brexit, when the US behaves in a trade war-like fashion as the biggest economy alongside the UK, it makes a world that is much less, let's say, favorable to investment. In general, it's a riskier world, more politicized world, and this is not helpful for anybody's growth.